Welcome to Fitness for the Rest of Us, the podcast that travels the back alleys and side roads of the fitness world and examines the way exercise intersects with mental health, personal development, culture, and more.
I'm Jessica Callis. I'm a social worker, peer supporter, power lifter, and nap time advocate.
I'm Peter McQueen. I'm a personal trainer, a writer, and a lifelong student of the obscure corners of life.
If you've ever felt like an outsider in fitness culture, this is the place for you. We're here to celebrate all body types and fitness levels, helping you find what works for you. No pressure, just progress.
All right, we are recording our first episode.
Here we go.
Yep, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I am actually really hungry. I've been waiting to eat lunch since we're talking about food today, and I wanted to show you this. All right, so obviously, we're doing this for both audio and video.
Right.
And so people who hear this for the first time on audio, what I'm holding right now looks a bit like what?
Yaya bread.
Okay, well, I wish it looked like yaya bread.
That's what it looks like on video.
No, so it looks to me like a piece of pound cake or something, right? Like it's a bready looking thing, of course.
Yeah.
And so what this actually is, though, I'm going to try and break it. It's my first attempt at making like a protein bar, because protein bars are, well, okay, it's actually not my first. It's actually not my first. I've been chasing this dragon for a while now, because I want to make, protein bars are a ripoff. You know that, right? Like,
of course.
Yeah. What's your favorite protein? What's your favorite one?
Lately, I've been eating the Cliff Bars, the cookies and cream Cliff Bars.
Okay, I actually love Cliff Bars, but they only have usually about 10 grams of protein, and a lot of that is, from oats and stuff. And I love them, but I want something that has the macros of a protein shake, but I'm tired of drinking it. You know what I mean? I want something I can chew. I miss texture.
Exactly. There's something about eating food that makes me feel like I've actually ate instead of drinking.
Exactly. But every time you look up protein bar recipes online, it's always like oats, peanut butter, and it's like, okay, that's great, but those macros aren't going to work for me. So I've been trying to do something with whey, and this is what I did to make this. It was I took honey. So I was on another journey. I was trying to make the world's most evil candy, which I will discuss at length sometime. I have some fun ideas, but and I was boiling down a syrup, and I started adding stuff into it, and I eventually got to like something that turned into something like a pumpkin pie filling. And I was like, I wonder if I could put whey protein in a syrup and end up with something.
You were trying to make the candy?
Yes. Well, so right. So it started out as a syrup infused with chilies. I kept adding stuff to it. It was New Year's Day. I was having fun experimenting. And then I made a really like dark toffee, like brittle type thing that was like brown butter and like toasted. And it was like all dark and burnt tasting. And like, so I've been kind of playing with this concept. And I did this. This is it's all honey and whey protein powder, a little bit of collagen and xanthan gum for chew. And I didn't add any fat at all.
Oh my God.
It's like edible, but it's really, really painfully dry. And,
tell me what else it tastes like. You said it's dry.
Yeah, it tastes like honey.
Profile.
It's roasty. I put oat flour in this too to add structure, and that's where I went wrong, because it really gets dense with all that fiber in it and stuff. But I like the macros. There's like this whole wedge that I just cut here, which is like 2 inches thick. Has got 40 grams of protein, 68 carbs, and only 1 gram of fat.
Wow.
And I had Steph try it, and Steph's exact words were, I just really wanted it to not be in my mouth. So
I know.
Back to the drawing board.
Feeling when you try some of those other like health replacement, like, oh, this is a protein cookie. Oh, this is, I don't know, sugar-free candy, and it's
Have you had those Larry and Lenny cookies?
I don't think I've had those. Or are those the ones that say like ultimate chocolate chip protein on
Something
it?
like that.
Yeah.
And they got the guys with the crazy hair on the front.
Yes, those ones.
Those have grown on me. The first time, they literally taste like you're biting into a shoe sole.
Yep.
But
with chocolate chips in it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, I think we'll go ahead and kind of start moving into stuff. So we're talking about food today, and we'll get into that a little bit further. But first, I just kind of wanted to say on record, what we're kind of trying to do with this podcast. It's fitness for the rest of us. Both of us feel like we maybe came to the gym through somewhat less than typical pathway. I was never into athletics growing up, and so I very much claimed fitness on my own terms and now made a career out of it, which is like the hardest left turn I've ever taken in my life.
But you made it. You did.
Yeah. And I just really want other people like us to feel like there's a conversation going on that's about them,
Yes, absolutely.
So, anyway, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's important because you so often hear of people who are either competing in bodybuilding or powerlifting or Olympic lifting, and then you hear of people that go to Planet Fitness and,
Right.
Walk on the treadmill for a half an hour and leave, or maybe do a couple machines.
Yeah.
Both ends are great because you're accessing fitness, but then there's everyone in the middle who wants to be a little more serious about their fitness, whatever that looks like, but they're not trying to make it their life. And that's
Right.
a big part of why I wanted to do this podcast with you, is because there is a way to have life balance no matter what's going on emotionally, physically, socially. You have the option to incorporate fitness in your life.
Before we get started, if you enjoy the show, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app of choice. It really does help us out. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and drop a comment below. Also, remember to like, follow, and interact with us on social media. All of our links are in the show notes. If you want to support the show, please consider donating or becoming a member on our Ko-fi page. Members get special bonus episodes, video content, and whatever other goodies we can cook up.
We do have a trigger warning. This episode includes topics that may be triggering for individuals who have experienced disordered eating. If you need support, please go to www.nationaleatingdisorders.org.
All right, so let's get into the meat of the episode. So the first thing we wanted to talk about, one big food thing you and I have in common since we are cousins and grew up together, is what we both refer to as yaya bread.
Yes.
And I don't know that anyone called it that when I was a kid. Do you remember anyone calling it anything other than?
So I always heard of it as Yaya Vallis bread because she was the one who kind of held the recipe, kind of started this tradition. So I always heard Yaya Vallis as our great grandmother. And so she was still alive. I was like 3 or 4, I think, when maybe even 4 or 5 before she passed away.
I was going to say, you're like 3 years younger, 2 or 3 years younger than me, I think. And I feel like I was 10 when she passed away.
Yeah.
I mean, she made it a long time. And
you're right. I was 7. I was 7.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this bread, it's been in our family for a couple of generations. It's not, as far as I know, it's not ancient, but it's kind of a play on challah bread, right? I mean, like at least that's how it reads to me. It's eggy.
Yes.
And I'm going to show for those of us who will tune in on video, I have a tattoo of the recipe in cartoon on my arm, and made in the direction so that I can read it, which of course I don't need to, but it seemed like the right way to do it.
Love it.
So yeah, because I grew up eating this bread, and I remember, like, I can conjure up the smell of it baking anytime I wish. And every time I smell it baking in my house, it just feels like home. And so, I mean, I remember smelling, Yaya made it. And the legend goes, when I was a little baby, because I was the oldest of our batch of cousins. And they always used to say that, like, I would crawl across the room and come up into Yaya Vallis's lap just as she sat down with her toast that she just made. And I would say toast, and she would end up giving me the whole thing. And do that multiple times a day when she would watch me when I was little. So, yeah, literally grew up eating it. And then when I was probably 25 before I learned to make it. I think I was living in California.
That means I learned how to make it before you did.
You probably did, honestly.
I did, because I was in high school taking like some cooking class in high school, and our Yaya, our grandmother, found out, and she was like, "Oh, let me teach you how to bake some things."
You actually learned it right from her then.
Yeah, I did, from Yaya. So
that's the funny thing. I don't remember Yaya, who's our regular grandmother. making it all that often. I remember her making baklava.
Yes.
For listeners,
She made
we
a
are
lot of
Greek.
kaloria too, because she taught me how to make
All the time.
kaloria. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? Actually, to circle back briefly to this horrible bread, texture
Yes.
is not unlike Gluria, actually.
Really? So
Um,
it's that
yeah,
dense.
yeah, it's very dense.
You
Yeah.
put coffee with it then.
hmm Anyway, so yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is it's just white bread. You know what I mean? There's nothing really
It
that
is.
crazy or special about it, but
Mm,
the way we make it, at least the way I was taught, my mom taught me, was really very based on feel, and you got to spend the time kneading it, and you just got to recognize the texture when you get there. And sometimes you overshoot it a little, sometimes you undershoot it a little, and like it always turns into something that's pretty good, you
yeah.
know. But you know when you get it like just right. And one thing that my that Steph added, my wife,
Mhm.
is more salt. You know, the recipe I learned had just more like a pinch of salt in it. For me, it's a
Mhm.
good old punch of salt, like a
Yep.
solid handful of it.
Yep. I learned
Um,
the pinch as well, but then
uh-huh.
when I asked you to send me the recipe several years ago, I saw the punch, and so I started adding like a whole palm full of
Yeah,
salt
same
for
here.
and that was even for the half recipe you sent me.
Yeah,
I'll do two for the full one,
I know.
and this stays between us and the podcast listener.
Yeah, us and hopefully the listening public. But yes, no one tell Yaya Vallis. Like,
And pretty much, pretty much. My dad says he prefers the way we make the bread to the way Mary makes it.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Yeah, I actually.
So
Oh my gosh.
when my Aunt Mary listens, I'm so sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, my mom will eventually listen to
Yes.
this, and yeah, I mean, my mom has made it so many times that she's had some really good batches that I haven't quite equaled. She's had some duds that I have surpassed,
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
yeah,
Absolutely. It depends all on the yeast, and honestly think it depends on the temperature outside and the
I do
humidity.
too. Yeah, and atmospheric pressure, and you hear that from bakers a lot too, bread bakers. So the thing though that I think makes this so special, quite apart from my memories of it, are the ritual I've established when I make it. Like,
Mhm.
so I've made it in a couple different people's houses for a couple different occasions, and I remember I definitely did get this ritual from growing up, but this has helped me convey the specialness to other people. Because when it comes out of the oven, the crust is a
Mhm.
little crispy. It's got that tap to it that we like. And as it sits out, and I've stored it in a couple different ways to try and preserve that, never managed to do it. It
Nope.
always softens up. And
Nope.
I like the soft texture too.
Yeah.
But that crispy texture when it's hot and the inside is still pretty doughy, but like it's
Mhm.
baked through, uh, and it's still hot enough to burn you when you're cutting it. Like it never quite attains that exact flavor and texture ever again, even though it goes through many other delightful stages.
Yeah.
And so every time I bake it, whoever's in my house has to stop what they're doing. We cut into a loaf, and usually I'll make a little extra bun of it, like just for this purpose. Cut
Exactly.
into it while it's still scalding hot,
Mhm.
spread real butter on it as much as you want, and eat it while it's still hot enough to burn your tongue. Because
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
texture mishmash between like the doughy crumb and the crispy crust and just poof,
Mhm.
amazing.
You're totally right. And anytime I bake it for my family, everyone fights over the heel of the bread
Yeah.
because that's where you get the crispiest
Mhm.
crunch, like you said,
Yep.
that is gonna fade shortly. So,
Yep.
yep,
Yeah.
we all have
It's
a
good.
slice though.
So, and that really it ties in also the fact that there's these rituals and these memories, something you don't hear a lot in fitness spaces, something you hear people kind of almost pretending like it's not true, is that food is a form of love. I mean, food
Yes.
is a form of communication between
Mhm.
people. And, when I cook for you, that is a statement I'm making to you. And
Yes.
we have these shared traditions that's a shared language that we have, and it's so deeply tied into our culture and our emotions, and a lot
Mhm.
of the typical fitnessy wisdom around nutrition kind of puts all that to one side. There's sometimes some
Yes.
tacit uh, um, acknowledgement that you do enjoy eating, but it's
Mhm.
almost always treated in a way like we need to do that as little as possible or something like
Right.
that. You know what I mean? Like, or
Yes.
and so yeah, I anyway. So I want to talk about our papu. And for those listening, papu is just Greek for grandfather. Uh, and he is probably the biggest influence, probably on both of us, I would guess, in terms of cooking and food and how we relate to it. Like, because
Absolutely.
everything I get from my mom, she gets directly from him. I feel like it
Right.
starts with him more than anybody else.
Yep. And my
Um,
dad also learned from him. He still makes a lot of the same recipes too
Yeah,
that
for
we
sure.
ate growing up.
Yeah. All right. So tell me, start from like the beginning of what you remember of Papu's story, and I'll sprinkle in whatever I know that, yeah.
Absolutely. So, our Papu grew up on a very small island off of the mainland of Greece called Samos. It's about 14 kilometers long and not that wide.
Okay.
Um, in a goat farming community in Leka, Samos. So he grew up, I think he was one of four children. Um, and by the time he was, early teens, the Greek-Turkish War had a huge impact on their daily life in Leka, and they were starving. They ate moldy potatoes. I know that his mother used to harvest dandelions, and they would have dandelion soup or dandelion salad, but they really were starving growing
Well,
up.
one thing I heard from around that time period is that he used to have to go watch the goats. That was part of his thing, and so he would spend his whole day in the fields. And my mom told me that he would take like a wine bottle
Hmm.
and fill half of it with olive oil and half of it with vinegar and shake it up, and that would be the only thing he would eat the entire day
Oh my
out
God.
in the fields.
That's
And so, like knowing what I know about nutrition, like we're talking dietary ketosis, like if that were all he had in an entire day, but then we're talking spoiled carbohydrates or
Mhm.
on there. And like, I just think about from a nutrition perspective, how that would have affected like his growth. And
Yes.
I mean, mom has talked to me a bunch of times. We all think that's why he was as short as he was. Cause like, I'm not very tall. I'm 5'11", if you ask the doctor. But I don't feel 5'11". And
Well, and even, his sisters never immigrated, but his
mhm.
brother, my
Yeah,
godfather, he
manual.
was
Yeah.
also, what, 5 foot?
Also, I mean, they're chest high. I mean,
Yeah.
they were both diminutive. Yeah. And,
Mhm.
and I do think, yeah, cause I mean, we're talking like teens, like, onset of puberty. I mean, that's when a lot of that growth happens. And if you don't have proper nourishment, anyway, so now, he's
Yeah.
a
So,
teenager. What happens next?
so he and his father and his brother, again, my godfather, Emmanuel, they decide to come check out America, basically. Um, they get here, they see how much better people are living, and they want to make this life their own. But they ended up going back to Greece, and I think you could correct me if this isn't right, but I think they came over at different times.
So this is the part where I'm really murky
Oh,
because I
yeah,
know,
I think they came over at different times, and that Papu actually came first, and then his father ended up perhaps staying in Greece, and then Emmanuel came over, and they
yeah,
both decided to go to Topeka, Kansas, because that was a huge Greek community at the time.
sure.
Um, and I know that Papu joined the American Air Force, that
Yep.
he served for several years, and then he got a job, met our Yaya, and he was taking night classes to
Yeah.
become an
To get
accountant.
into accounting. Yeah. And the
Mhm.
thing I remember hearing about, or well, nobody's ever said this to me explicitly, but he was a cook in the Air Force,
Mhm.
and I think that one interesting way in which like his nutrition history affected it is like the Air Force pilots and people who get to do the cool Air Forcey jobs. There's a big physical fitness requirement that, of course, he couldn't meet because of the way he grew up,
Right.
and I feel like there was also kind of an interesting psychological thing that must have happened with him going from the scarcity that he knew growing up to having it be his literal physical job to feed like these hungry super active like soldiers and everything. And and I don't know the particulars of what kind of where he was stationed specifically and what kind of activities were going on in those areas, but like I know what military bases are like, and there's
Yes.
it's a whole lifestyle that I can't imagine two things more differently than how he grew up and how that must have been,
I know. Completely
so
different.
but yeah, I mean, and the big thing that I think probably is tied into all there is what my mom said to me was that when he came to America, he started eating for the first time and he never really stopped. And
Right.
of course, it did. Even though he lived a very full life and hung on almost as long as any of us could have wanted, we would have loved to have had him well until we were old.
Of course. Of
But
course.
eventually, of course, his poor nutrition habits were part of the situation that eventually did claim his life.
Yep,
And so,
exactly. Poor cardiovascular health led to heart problems.
yep.
which is directly impacted by your nutrition.
Yeah, 100%. And so it gets into a very interesting push and pull there about not only how our personal relationship with food affects our health, because I mean, the reason he ate the way he did is because of this whole food is love thing, and food was salvation, to him.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of times you don't see that kind of thing acknowledged in fitness spaces, where for some people just the ability to eat consistently is such a powerful life-changing force that
Mhm.
secondary concerns that are maybe 30, 40 years in the future, I mean, never enter their minds. And a lot of times people who endure food scarcity also endure poor education and things like that, and aren't exposed to the nutrition information they need to even understand what happens to their bodies if they adopt certain eating habits. And so, like, there's so many angles at which food scarcity affects how we relate to nutrition and how our
Mhm.
health goes.
Absolutely.
um, yeah, and there's also kind of another thing that we get also from Greek culture, and really this is true in so many like peasant-based and immigrant-based cultures, is
Mhm.
the clean plate club thing,
Yes.
right? And
Oh
the
yeah.
shape it always took with us was, what does the guy say?
Yeah. You don't like it?
What's the matter for you?
What's the matter? You don't
Yeah.
like it? And the
'Cause-
big
yeah.
thing was always, you just got to their house. Are you hungry? I'm gonna
Yeah.
put some food out.
I
Yeah.
know. And yeah, I mean, and I can so clearly place myself around that dinner table, and I always liked sitting in that one corner next to that little desk that was in there, and I remember those white china bowls, and we'd always have like a really basic salad with Greek dressing and slices of Wonder Bread and butter, and like every single time, I got so many memories around that table, and
But like
uh,
you said, that's part of their experience being, like you said, peasants
mhm,
and starving to
yeah,
coming to America, having food, and wanting to make sure your family always has food. He
right, and
didn't want us to
y-
go through what he went through. So
yes,
that was his number one love language, I guess you could
yeah,
say, before that became a thing, was making sure we were all fed because
yes,
he didn't want us to go hungry. And
yeah, and you tap
that's the
into.
whole, clean plate club is
Mhm.
you would never waste food if you were starving. So we can't waste food because what if that happens again?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, the word that kept kind of when I was thinking about this same thing is like it was not just love that is something that you like want to show, but it was a responsibility.
Mhm.
I mean, there was almost. I'm sure that he felt that. He never expressed that to me, but like I'm sure that when he was cooking, like to him, this was like a sacred duty he was fulfilling.
Mhm.
Given
Yep,
what he had went through.
absolutely. He was the
Yeah,
patriarch of the family. It was up to
yeah,
him.
yeah,
So,
for
yeah.
sure. So getting away a little bit from like Papu's story, like we talked about how food scarcity and deserts are definitely still a very real problem all over the world, but definitely in the U.S. And there's so many other factors. So like you had some stats and stuff. Like talk to me about some of the stuff you were saying earlier.
Yeah, so if you look at the stats from 2023, which came from the USDA Economic Research Service under the US Department of Agriculture, only 86% of households were considered food secure. So always had something to eat, could always afford food. Um, that's not a lot.
I mean,
And
yeah, we're talking like a good like sixth of the population almost there. Like,
right,
yeah,
exactly. And so 13.5%, which is 18 million US households, were food insecure at some time during the year 2023.
wow.
Um, and it actually increased the food insecurity was significantly higher than the 12.8% in 2022. So it jumped up a whole million people. Yes.
This is a very real problem for a lot of people. And,
Yes.
and so it's not just that, there are large scale kind of political things that need to be said about this, but it also needs to be understood by people in the fitness culture,
Hmm.
that people, not having their diets locked in, and some of the kind of judgmental comments that I've come across, like need to understand that this situation is far more complicated than just wanting it bad enough. I mean, that's the thing that I always run into so
Hmm.
much. People who have good genetics, who are high responders to exercise, they've done the work, of course, so they deserve some of the credit. But they don't understand that just the economic situation and the nutritional education and genetic situations of people in vastly different backgrounds,
Hmm.
does affect, I mean, it deserves to be talked about. It's really easy to
Right.
say, well, if you don't want it bad enough, you're not going to look like me or whatever, but there's more to be said than that.
Right. So I think, we talked about Papu and how he grew up starving.
Yeah.
In the United States, there are still people who are starving and cannot get the nutritious food they need in order to be where they want to be with their fitness.
Yeah. And
So,
I think the one thing that throws a lot of people about that too is that you think starvation and you think too skinny, unhealthy, but that's actually not really how this takes shape at
no.
all. Like,
Mm-mm.
um, not people don't understand that the stuff that they can afford is bad for them because a lot of it is just all processed carbs and things that are very easy to overconsume, things that are fine in moderation in a lot of
Mhm.
cases, but
Yep.
yeah, just if that's all you can afford to eat. hmm.
Yep. Well,
So
and
like,
so that goes to food deserts, which
mhm,
means people do not have access to a grocery store. They might just have convenience stores, like you said, that are selling chips, candy, sodas. And there were actually in 2022, 39 million people in America lived in a food desert. So
yeah.
they did not have direct access to supermarkets,
It doesn't
which,
surprise me. Having lived in rural Arkansas, I mean, it's Dollar Generals and stuff,
yeah,
you know?
exactly, Dollar Generals, convenience stores. So I think that really shows how even though 18 million of US households were food insecure at some time, that then there were still 39 million people who didn't have access to healthy foods, even if they could, afford the cost,
Yeah.
which we were talking about how that also varies state to state. I live
Yes.
in Northern Virginia. You can get a block of tofu for $1.75,
Uh,
no fat, very low carbohydrates, all protein source.
yeah.
Whereas where you live, it's
West Texas.
$3 a block.
Yeah.
So,
$3,
yep.
which is funny. And I'm actually surprised it's that cheap just because it's not a popular choice around here. And typically price seems to scale with demand, and like, so,
Yeah.
well, yeah. So kind of shifting gears a little bit because, yeah, definitely there's that side of how food insecurity, affects obesity and everything. But both of us have had individual rate struggles. So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of lead off with mine, if that's
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been up and down in weight a bunch of times in my life, and when I was a kid, I was bullied a lot, and a lot of it was from kids who did really well in sports. So I had this very clean, like jocks nerds divide that I kind of defined myself by, or I felt kind of pushed into that box anyway. And so that kind of had two effects. One, I mean, I was not fat as a kid. I was very normally built, but I was around a lot of people who would probably like the term endomorph. You familiar with those terms?
Yes.
And those are
Yes.
somewhat disputed terms and everything, but it at least conjures a picture here. We're
Mhm.
talking, when they were kids, they were skinny, they had visible ribs, right? And I just wasn't built that way. I was just a thicker, fleshier person, but
Right.
I was definitely not fat.
Hmm.
And when I was like 17, I think I weighed like 165,
Yeah.
which, dear God, like me at
For your
165,
height,
I'd be
that
leaning forward
is,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I not only did I learn that people who are into athletics are mean to me, and therefore I don't do athletic stuff, but I also learned that I was a fat person, even though I wasn't.
Right.
And I internalized that, and it shaped my eating habits.
Mhm.
So mine weren't so much shaped by economic stuff because I did grow up very privileged, but there was an emotional thing that happened to me that was kind of this self-feeding cycle of sedentary lifestyle, comfort foods,
Mhm.
eating my emotions and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I remember the first time I lost a lot of weight was with the Atkins diet, which of course dates
Yep.
me rather
Mhm.
severely, but I had good success. I mean, it was the first time I had ever really tried to measure or manage anything that I had eaten, and that was that. People who've been through that know that that can be a very empowering experience. And if you have results, you build some confidence too, because not only did you like learn this new thing to do, but you got the results with it and you did it.
Mhm.
You got the dream or whatever. And but low carb lifestyles at that time, there weren't nearly as many like keto friendly options as like tortillas and things like that. I ate almost everything from Chinese buffets because you can do that pretty keto. There's some hidden carbs, but I was also a man in my 20s. a little bit of anything was enough to tip the balance in my favor.
Exactly.
So I did that, but it just wasn't sustainable long term. I graduated from college. I went into, my normal adult life. I worked at convenience stores, retail, restaurants, and that kind of stuff. And just, I ended up putting it back on over time,
Yeah.
And then when I met Steph, I had gone back up in weight. I think I was that time topped out around somewhere like 280 or something like that, and was still very sedentary. But then, we got together, we moved to California, we decided to get married. We both decided we wanted to kind of, trim up a little bit for the wedding and everything. And we did. So we did kind of a low carb paleo kind of thing where it was a little bit amorphous, but we were, planning our meals. And I actually developed this ridiculous system where I had a bunch of little paper cutouts, and then I had like a weekly calendar pasted up on one of our cabinets.
Yeah.
And we would kind of like pick and choose like what we would make for each meals. And I basically did meal prep for both of us because I was a freelance writer at the time. And so I packed Steph's lunches, I had breakfast, and I worked on her schedule because why the heck not?
Yeah.
And we both lost some weight. I was doing Wii Fit also, was another fun thing. We had a Nintendo Wii, and again, it wasn't really that strenuous. It was just enough moving my body to tip the balance in my favor. And I found a fun way to do it, which is something I will want to talk about more, on this show, about how fun is probably the most potent motivator, I would say, for fitness and stuff. And so it worked really good for me.
Yeah.
Then we moved to Arkansas. Our food sourcing changed and blah, blah, blah. And then I was, still working as a writer, very sedentary. And then we had kids, and so.
Two beautiful girls, by the way.
Very much. So, and because I was, already working from home, it made sense for me to transition into a stay-at-home thing. And I thought for a while that I could keep working too. I was rapidly disabused of that illusion. But yeah, I mean, and so I was just wrangling, toddlers, and didn't have much activity in my life other than that. And that is not really enough to keep pace with the type of eating that I was doing. And so I got to my highest that I ever got to was 315. Okay. And, I always kind of packed it on kind of dense. Like I didn't really know, how out of control it had gotten, but I had started seeing it in the stuff that matters to me most is not the scale stuff. It wasn't then, and it still isn't now, but it was little things like being able to bend over and tie my shoes without having to hold my breath. Like I would have to get a big and then tie my shoe and then, Yeah, and it was tied all the way over on the side, because I can't reach far enough and stuff like that. And like, I had to, swing my leg up behind me to bend over and get anything off the floor. And like, it did it with a lot of huffing and puffing and all that stuff. And when you have little kids, like there's a lot of getting up and down off the floor.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of heavy lifting and stuff. And so eventually I had a very minor health scare. I had a leg that swelled up for like no reason. We never really found a cause. I went to the hospital just to make sure it wasn't a blood clot. And it was just one of those things of like, well, if you got in better shape, stuff like this might just kind of stop happening, which is from doctors. I get that some of that's very judgmental and stuff. And I am, I've got some male privilege. So like, it doesn't necessarily hit me the way it hits other people. But at the time, that was actually what I needed to hear. I understand that's not the right message for most people in most times, but it worked on me this once. And so we started going to a local community center gym, and the kids were old enough to go to the daycare, and suddenly exercise time became alone time.
The sacred alone time of a parent.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of spiraled from there. I'll get into more of the fitnessy stuff, but later. But I started doing intermittent fasting, which turned into this kind of like fun way to challenge myself almost. And I did some pretty aggressive stuff. I went 72 hours one time, and because I had so much weight to lose, I was insulated from some of the negative consequences of that kind of stuff. And so I didn't have anything bad happen. But looking back, I would certainly not do that again. And I would certainly not recommend the types of things I did to others, because there was definitely some psychological stuff going on. Like if I had a fasting window that was going to end at 3 p.m., you better believe I was up at 8 that morning making lists of everything I was going to eat and like all this stuff. And like I obsessed over cooking food for the kids and Steph and stuff, just because that was my way to interact with it, and like, and so, yeah, it ended up having more power over me than, but it was also important and empowering because my main obstacle has always been hunger. Like I'm a big dude, and just even basically moving my body around makes me hungry.
Yeah.
And so I would just want to eat and feel full. It's about food volume for me.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time to figure out how to adjust my nutrition so that I could eat the volume of food I want while
Yes.
still fueling the goals that I have. And of course, it was a big, I had to develop those goals and stuff. But now, the fasting taught me that hunger is not an emergency. That was the part that I needed to learn. Like I needed to
That's a good
experience
lesson.
that feeling of control. And once I got that, I've been able to take that and keep a more balanced approach overall. And so, now I work in the fitness industry. I'm still like the biggest looking trainer there, but I tell everybody my goals are just I want to have clean blood work when I go to the doctor. I want to move my body the way I want to move, and I want to be the strongest guy my kids know until I die.
There you
That's the
go.
goal. We'll
There you
see how
go.
much of that I manage
Those
to
are
hang on
great
to.
goals. I love those.
Yeah. All right. So that's my story. I would love to hear more of yours because I know the broad strokes and stuff, but there's a lot that I don't know. So
Absolutely, yeah. So, like you kind of said, we both came to fitness in different ways, and we have kind of both approached healthy eating in different ways, though our nutrition both stems from the experience from our families. So, like you
yep.
said, food was love. So,
Yep.
even though I had the opposite experience of you, I was an athlete in junior high, in high school, in my early 20s. I was playing three sports until I was a freshman in high school and then played varsity softball. I was snowboarding every weekend. So,
I actually didn't know a lot of that.
oh, really?
I really didn't know. I didn't know you were that into it. I knew you
I
had some
played
stuff, but
I
yeah.
played basketball, I ran track, and I played softball, and then kind of let all those other sports go to focus on softball.
Sure.
I wasn't the best. I wasn't good, but I was still moving, and it was a sport that I loved that actually my dad like was my coach, and like I was
Really?
7 years old. It was t-ball. So I started from a very young age because my dad enjoyed
And
sports.
he's super into sports. Yeah, that
Oh yeah.
tracks.
Oh yeah. Huge basketball player. So I kind of grew up being able to eat for comfort because I was so active. Like
Sure.
it was okay for me to have five cookies because I just played a basketball game, for however long and, burned a whole lot of calories. So I got away with eating what I wanted. And so all through, those formative years of junior high, high school, that's what I learned is if I kept myself active, I could eat what I wanted and it would be fine.
Right.
Um, what happened is I went to college and like I said, I wasn't super good at the sports that I did. So I wasn't on any sports teams. I tried an intramural league my freshman year, decided that going out and drinking was a lot more fun than that. So really stopped going to the gym, stopped playing team sports, but kept eating,
Mm-hmm.
kept eating the exact same because that was all I ever knew.
Yeah.
I also had some mental health struggles in college, and that kind of fed into eating more because food equals love, love equals not being alone. And
Yeah.
so I would binge eat all through college. And then even outside of college, that was my pattern. I would binge eat and then not eat for a while because I hadn't figured out yet that I was equating food with love. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the whole thing that hit me through my 20s and into my early 30s was I just need to fill this hole that I have.
Sure.
Um, it wasn't until I really was focusing on my recovery that I realized that there's more than just healing my psychological side, but it's also about healing the other areas of my life. So I really took a hard look at how I was fueling my body and I was not fueling it properly. I could eat 5,000 calories in one sitting. Like that's how bad my binges were,
Oh
or
my.
even more. I'm not actually sure because I was too
Right.
embarrassed to keep track.
Yeah.
So I moved to Northern Virginia in 2016, and that's when I decided things needed to change. At my highest, I'm 5'5". At my highest, I was 285. So a lot of weight, I also have had chronic pain since I was a teenager, and so all that extra weight just made me feel awful. I hurt all the time. My knees hurt. I could hardly walk. My knees hurt so bad. So I decided I'll get a personal trainer. They'll teach me how to eat. It'll be great. So the trainer that I found said, all you need to do is go keto and you will lose a whole bunch of weight. So I did. I lost like 60 pounds doing keto. I was running 5Ks. I was doing some general weightlifting. And then I stopped keto because I was like, well, I really need to focus on healthy eating, being balanced. Because, like you said, eating low carb for me wasn't sustainable long term. So then I started eating without any kind of plan, and it evolved back into binge eating. It evolved back into um, just not fueling my body in a way that was productive. It would be overfueled and then underfueled.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it,
if I can interrupt for just a sec, you touch on something that is really, I think, insightful in that once you're off like the diet with the name,
Mhm.
like things kind of just blah, blah. And I
Exactly.
think that's the only real problem I have with named diets like keto and paleo,
Mhm.
because nutritionally I understand how they work, and psychologically I understand how that might be a good option for some people.
Mhm.
Um, but really, I think when you're following a plan, a set of instructions, it's really easy to just do what you're told without ever learning the underlying principles.
Right.
And so, meaning what that means is that once the plan goes, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
Whereas if you dig deeper and learn what underlies the plan, that's how you have to get to a flexible strategy. And
Right.
just so many people either just don't have the time, don't have the
Mhm.
access to the education, or just
Mhm.
don't want to know. You know.
Right. And I think that actually leads me into where I was going next is I
Sure.
got my first powerlifting coach. I'm
Mhm.
a huge power lifter. I haven't been able to this last year, which we'll go into in further episodes, but I found a coach who believed in if it fits your macros.
Yeah.
And so he created, my macro goals and said, you can eat whatever you want, but it needs to fit into this amount of protein, this amount of carbs, this amount of fat.
Sure.
And I latched onto that and I was able to lose more weight, but I became obsessive about meeting my goals, about,
Yeah.
if I went over on my macros, it was the worst day ever, and I should probably eat less the next day to fix it. So it still became a way for me to obsess about what I was eating. And I think you hit something really important about male privilege because I grew up very privileged, white household, middle class, things like that.
Mhm.
But I'm a female. And so there was always that if you're skinny, you're happy. If
Right.
you're not skinny, you're not happy. And so because I had found this if it fits your macros, I thought, okay, this is gonna make me happy because I'll be skinny. Lost
Sure.
a bunch of weight again, was not happy.
Sure.
Stopped counting my macros at the beginning of COVID because the world imploded on
Yeah.
itself
I was
and
going
I
to say that was a
stopped.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I stopped. I couldn't go to the gym. The gyms were closed. So I stopped exercising and then slowly stopped caring about meeting my macros. Gained all the weight back that I had lost. This next coach, the coach that I most recently worked with,
Mhm.
works with a lot of people who have disordered eating and told me just do a food checklist. Did you eat protein at every meal? Are you drinking 100 ounces of water or more? Have you had 3 servings of vegetables? Have you had 2 servings of fruit? Did you eat protein at every meal? Did you walk at least 7,000 steps?
Yeah.
That has been the most helpful for me out of anything. It's just
That's awesome.
balancing my nutrition. It's not counting, it's not obsessing. It's just, did I actually eat a vegetable today? Did I eat a fruit today?
Sure.
And like you said, starvation used to be scary. And so, like, instead of focusing on, oh, I'm going to be starving, it's, oh, I actually need to eat another serving of fruit today, which just really clicked in my head. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
that's
that
great. That's great. And that's actually pretty similar to like some of the different approaches I try to lead people to in my job, you know. So I mean, when I'm onboarding a new client, obviously figuring out their nutrition approach is all part of it. But a lot of trainers will have kind of a prescribed method. A lot of them are like keto cultists or like, you know, if the IIFYM crowd like is stuff. And then even though that's pretty similar to how I eat, like there's a lot of kind of identity based dietary approaches where like you are one of these people, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah,
I try to
you get categorized very quickly.
yeah, but I try to get completely out of that and be an educator as much as possible to, like I was saying, teach those underlying principles. But then, you know, I say to a lot of people that what gets measured gets managed, but that doesn't mean you have to measure everything.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to measure all the time. It just means you have to measure enough that you can make better decisions on average over long periods of time. Right. And so like I use Precision Nutrition's calculator a lot. Have you seen that company out there?
Yeah.
They're a
make
pretty
a
big
lot of
one in the
products.
space. Yeah. And they have like a macro calculator that breaks everything down into the hand method. And I'm sure that if you're familiar with the hand method, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But for anyone who's not, you know, it's a palm-sized serving of protein, a fist of vegetables, a scooped handful of carbs, which they include fruit typically with that. Sometimes I think fruit's kind of an edge case, and I'll count that more like a fist. But then a thumb's worth of fat. Now, of course, you get these weird, tiny little thumbs.
I was gonna say my thumb gives me more fat than you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got this weird little top knuckle. And for anyone who's just listening to this, go look up Megan Fox's thumbs because she has my thumbs. Did you know this?
No,
Did you
I
know about
didn't.
Megan
I
Fox's
mean, I
thumbs?
didn't know that that's what your thumb looked like. But
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't, right? Like, I mean, how often do you really look at another person's thumb? But no, I get crap for it all the time, and Steph calls it my club thumb, and like, yeah, it's. But I'll tell you, it's okay. So it makes for a really, really difficult hook grip on a barbell because
yeah,
I don't have a lot of top
exactly.
knuckle to wrap over, right?
Yeah.
But it makes for an extra secure, like traditional grip because I got this nice groove and this big, fat, wide knuckle that wraps around the bar.
Mm-hmm. See, there's pros
Anyway,
and cons
so
to everything.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so when I'm with clients, I'm just trying to find them figure out whatever they need to make just to improve their average decision quality around food.
So let me
And
ask
it's
you this. When you're
yeah,
working with clients, do you ask them to keep a food journal before you
only
start?
no, only if they want to. And also if I really want some data so that I can help them make a more educated decision. Like I got one guy right now who I told him, you know, I want you to track 3 days next week. Just write everything down. You don't have to use an app if you don't want it. I'll put it in my app. I'll figure it all out. And so, yeah, because I'm trying to get pictures of averages sometimes. So sometimes I will have people do that. Sometimes they comply. Sometimes they don't. I work, you know, I try to not make it about pressure because having lived with pressure around my diet, like that's not what I think is going to benefit the people I work with. And so
Pressure,
yeah,
not pressure, progress.
yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Progress, no pressure. So anyway, so yeah, I do a lot of people with the hand method, but I have found a more comfortable approach for me that is very numbers based and is very scientific because I have found enjoyment in some of that. But at the same time, like I've lived it the other way too, where having too many numbers hanging over your head becomes like a stressful thing that you then, of course, deal with by breaking out of the diet. And anytime you lock those chains on yourself, it's just a matter of time until you got to unshackle yourself and go wild. But I use and I'm going to go ahead and like say it, and like we don't have any official relationship with them, of course, but Macro Factor is the app that I use, and I like it because one of the biggest underlying principles of it is adherence neutrality. So, a lot of diet apps out there, you go over your calories or you go under your protein or whatever it is, and it's going to turn red and you're a bad girl, and there's none of that psychological like stuff going on in Macro Factor. I still think it would probably be a bit much for someone who's had like what they're calling orthorexia, which is a lot of what you described, that obsession over hitting the numbers, and being precise with it and all that. So it's definitely still not for everybody, but I feel like compared to the other things out there, it gives me more of that kind of big picture, like worrying about averages over time. And that's a healthy place for me to be. And for me, interacting with like knowing what the macronutrients and stuff is for the individual foods I'm eating helps me be able to eyeball it on those times when I'm not tracking. So like
Right.
I've developed a skill like that. Lots of people who do this have this skill where you can kind of glance at something and just guess, okay, that's going to have more fat than protein. Like that's not what
Right.
my body needs right
Well,
now.
they have the plate method now. I think that's what
Yes.
the government is using
Yep.
instead of the food pyramid is your
Yep.
plate, and that
Yeah.
your plate should be, 25% protein,
Yep.
25% carbs, half vegetables.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
actually think that's a really good system for sure.
Hmm.
And I think that works. That's really easy for most people to put together. And I also like the idea that they use a plate. I don't know if this is baked into why they chose to do that system, but for me, a big transition that I made in my dieting was I don't let myself stand there and eat out of containers anymore. I have to like
Yep.
get a serving and
There
like
you
have a portion.
go.
And so I feel like the plate method is a subtle like way to have people do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like how the government nutrition stuff has evolved over the
Evolved
years.
over
Like I feel
time.
like it
Right.
has really improved a lot with time. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Well, I
yeah,
think
I mean,
that I liked seeing our journeys into where we are, like where
mhm,
we've come and where we are now. And I think it really shows the difference between like you as a left-brained individual wanting the numbers, wanting the science behind it, and then applying that to your life.
right,
Whereas I'm coming from the right brain side, the emotional, the feeling, the, wanting to work through past challenges. And
sure,
we both found a way to come to the nutrition that works for us.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we kind of, so I've kind of talked a little bit already about how nutrition gets into my my profession and everything. And you've kind of touched on how you did it with you, and I know that that comes up a lot in how you use it in your profession. But do you have any more you want to add to that about like how it influences your work?
Yeah, I think, as someone who's worked as providing peer support and also providing therapy and case management.
Hmm.
The thing about nutrition is it has to be a balanced part of your life. The SAMHSA, the substance abuse and mental health gurus of the government say
Sure.
that there are actually 8 dimensions of wellness, and food and nutrition is one of those. And so it's
Interesting.
looking at how do you balance eating healthy, eating what you want, being happy, but also
Hmm.
eating healthy and having that fit into your social life, your housing. How are you going to store your food? There are so many different things that you need to consider when you're looking at a holistic approach, which is what social workers do. So I think, looking at the science behind nutrition is very important, but like you've said, it has to be about maintaining that in your daily life.
Yeah.
Like, so
To
going
continue
really
to,
hard on a diet for 6 months is not sustainable because you cut out going to restaurants with your friends. Like,
yeah.
you can't, that's not sustainable long term. And
Yeah.
so I think in my profession, that's what's really important to look at is all areas of your life, the
Other dimensions
yeah,
of wealth.
and how it impacts that. If you don't have transportation right now, how are you going to get your groceries? Are
Gotcha.
you able to afford, having Instacart bring your food? Do you live in a place where Instacart delivers? So it's really looking at everything like nutrition as one piece, but also how it fits into the rest of the pie of your life.
All right, very cool. Yeah, and I would like to dig in more in future episodes to hear some more of your work experience, and I would probably love to like talk through some specific stuff on my end too. But
Yeah.
that's something we'll bring in future episodes. But yeah, it's
Little
a lot of
preview,
this
so
show is all going to be about intersectionality and
Mhm.
how these different areas connect to one another and move through our lives and everything, and how there's a broader range of pathways through all of this mess than most people usually hear about. So.
Yep.
So before we wrap up, let's. I want to do some practical takeaways. So, if you don't mind, I'll lead off.
Yeah.
So, like the thing that I tell a lot of people, I mean, is what gets measured gets managed. I've already said that. You only have to manage it well enough that you make better decisions on average. And I'd like to tell people that tracking your nutrition or food checklist or whatever method you use, it's a tool, right? And so you can screw in a screw with your fingers and get it finger tight. And for some applications, that's tight enough. But you can get it a heck of a lot tighter if you use a screwdriver. And to me, that's what a method like a food checklist or the hand method is kind of like a screwdriver. And for me, having an app is like a power drill. You don't always need the power drill, but if you want it, that's what you use. Yeah. So, and then the other kind of practical thing is that I want to say, and again, I say this all the time, is consistency is all that matters. Like, I mean, you could literally chuck every other goal related to nutrition out the window. And if you can stay consistent, you will see positive results. I mean, you may not go as far as fast as you could possibly imagine, but I will sacrifice anything to get consistency. All right. Everything else is on the table. Everything else is expendable. Consistency is the only thing that matters.
Right.
So I would love to hear any practical takeaways you have on food.
I actually just kind of want to sum up this episode first. We talked about how this was going to be about nutrition and food. If I heard that kind of episode subject for a podcast, I'd think, oh, they're going to give me a meal plan. They're going to tell me what to eat.
Sure.
This is going to be great. I'm going to come out with a 7-day meal plan and get my healthy eating started.
Right.
The purpose of this episode is to show that you can come from so many different backgrounds and then find a way towards your ideal nutrition.
Yes.
It's a different pathway for everyone. It's a different, your progress is going to be different. The way that you get to your ideal nutrition is different. Even the term ideal nutrition is going to be different. So the purpose of today was to share our backgrounds and to share where we're at now so that we can delve further into the nutrition and fitness realm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in this first season, each one of these episodes I think is fairly broad and is going to be kind of like a web that kind of spirals out over successive seasons. Hopefully we get enough listenership that all of that stuff can come to fruition.
Like and share.
Yeah, exactly. Like and share. And also, like, incidentally, when it comes to, practical takeaways, and you kind of made me think of this, there are professionals, that you may be in a position to hire. I'm one of them. And then there are also resources out there that don't require payment. There's mental health resources that you can get connected to, and there are online communities that can provide help with this kind of stuff. And I think just rather than if somebody came to this episode hoping to walk away with a plan, I think the plan they should walk away with is there's people I can talk to and there's options for me. You know what I mean? And so you just, the food is so deeply connected to our lives, you're not going to be able to half-ass it. You're going to have to put some thought into it to truly master its place in your life. Yes. And that's going to mean connecting to other people and being exposed to new ideas. And if you need
choosing what works best for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you need help doing that, come get it. You can talk to us. You can talk to Reddit. You could talk to your local, counseling apparatus through your municipality or whatever. All kinds of good stuff. So, and we will, when we post this, we will try and assemble some resources. I know you talked about some eating disorder resources, and I'm sure that there's other things that you could probably recommend to people. We will dump all that stuff in the show notes so that we are actually giving people stuff they can walk away with. It may not be the meal plan they might have hoped for, but I think it's something better in the long run.
Yes. And so going back to you saying, what would you take away from this? I'm taking away that whether you count your macros, whether you keep a food journal, whether you use intuitive eating or mindful eating, all of those are valued pathways that are going to help you find. And when I say ideal nutrition, it's being the healthiest version of yourself that you want to be. So that's my takeaway, is that there are so many different ways to do that. And a lot of them don't have to be so strict or so kind of lackadaisical that you don't quite know what you're doing.
True. All right. So we'll wrap up the serious stuff there.
But
And
now that that's out of the way.
yeah, but okay, so before we go, I wanted to get your weirdest food hot take and your
Hmm.
weirdest don't knock it till you try it food. So you start us off.
Yep. Okay. So, food hot take is actually something chilly. I believe that all leftovers should be consumed cold. I do not care what it is, if it's pizza, spaghetti. I actually just ate cold chili the other day.
What
And
about like lasagna with the ricotta and everything in it?
yeah, yeah,
Cold?
cold.
Oh man.
Everything should be cold. I don't care what it is, and I will eat it for breakfast. I would eat cold lasagna for breakfast. I do not
Oh
believe
no.
in reheating food.
That's great. All right. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, I love a cold pizza. I'll
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, cold pizza is a special thing. But all right.
Yes.
All right. So weirdest don't knock it till you try it. Let's hear it.
So this actually is a story. It's about
Okay.
how I met my husband,
I love that.
and he told me this later. He decided to take me to a Burmese restaurant to see what I would do because he's a very adventurous eater. He loves any type of food. In fact, he's super disappointed he can't eat Ethiopian food anymore because he's allergic to the bread. Um,
Oh,
so he decides to take me to a Burmese restaurant as a test, and I didn't know it was a test. So I also don't look at menus ahead of time. And so I was looking over the menu. The waiter came over, and I'm like, I'm gonna try your curried goat because I love goat. I think that probably comes from our Greek
Greek.
background.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was so excited to try different cultures' goat meat.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Good news is I passed his test.
Yeah. That's great.
Curried goat passed the
Yeah.
test.
Heck yeah, man. I love it. Curry goat. I've actually never had, I've had goat and I've had lots of curry and I learned to make okay curry, but
Yeah.
never done the two.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
Burmese curry is very different than like Indian curry.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I also recommend trying Burmese food. There is a fermented tea leaf salad that is amazing.
Interesting. Wow. Far out. We'll have to talk about that more sometime.
Yep.
All right. So my weird food hot take is like warm liquid foods.
Yeah.
I like can't do it really. Like I don't like soup, and
You
I'm
don't
like
like
the only
soup?
person I know who doesn't like soup. And it's okay. I should
Not
say
any kind
it's
of
not like
soup?
I'll never eat soup.
Yeah.
If like I'll eat soup sometimes, like a
Hmm.
thick stew, but anything with
Okay.
broth, like
Hmm.
chicken noodle soup, can't stand it. And like I don't even really like tomato. I used to love tomato soup. Don't really like. I just don't want warm liquid. And
No.
the thing that comes up more than anything is cheese dip. Because or cheese soup or anything like that. Everyone wants the queso at a
Right.
Mexican restaurant. That stuff is like super gross to me. I
Oh my God.
can't do queso.
All right, that tops weirdness. You don't like
I
queso.
know.
You don't like nacho cheese sauce.
Yeah, right, right. All right, and then my don't knock it till you try it food. I bet you there's a lot of people who actually do something similar to this. But Thanksgiving, like, is my favorite holiday, and not even so much because of the day, but the day after when I eat the sandwich.
Yes.
And it always yaya bread in my house, so I gotta have that. As it's not really the best sandwich bread, but it works for this.
But I love it for
And then I gotta
sandwiches.
have a layer of a little bit of gravy, a little bit of mashed potatoes, a little bit of green bean casserole if we have it, or any other green that's left over. I've done it with spinach before, cream spinach. It's a family that prepared that, and then some turkey and cranberry sauce on the other side of bread, and
Perfect.
like that layer by layer progression. You
Yep.
get it. I mean, it's the size of an encyclopedia when you eat it. Like,
Does it have to be in the correct order, the
yes,
layers?
for
Okay.
me, yes, it does. Because the gravy and the potatoes go together. The potatoes and the beans are not worlds away flavor wise. The turkey goes good on top of that, but cranberry sauce is really good on turkey. But cranberry sauce doesn't really match with any of those. Yeah, so you get it in the right order and it stacks up perfectly.
There you go. I love it. I think you've made me your sandwich before, and I remember thinking this is the
Have I really?
greatest sandwich of my life.
Yes. All
Yes.
right. Sweet. All right. So I think that's it. I mean, I think we just recorded episode 1. I mean, I think that's it. So, woohoo. All right. So, everybody who's listening and everyone who will one day come to listen, welcome to Fitness for the Rest of Us. This is what we're going to try and do. And I hope to hear from everybody sooner or later. Interact with
Love to
us on
hear your
social, blah, blah,
ideas.
blah. And,
Yeah,
we'll have
we'd
all.
love to hear your ideas for shows. We want to
Yes.
talk about what you guys care about.
Yeah, and if you think you have something worth talking about, get in contact with us because we're not famous or anything. So like I will at least read most people's emails, no matter how weird they are. And so like if you want to come talk to us about something, like throw it out there. Why not?
Do
Can't hurt.
it. Yeah.
One day I'll probably wind up blocking those psychos, but not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Stalking is exciting at first.
There you go.
Thanks for listening to the Fitness for the Rest of Us podcast. Please remember to like, rate, subscribe, drop us a review, and connect with us on social. Please also remember that we are not medical doctors or registered dietitians. We're not even really experts. The information discussed on this show is presented purely for entertainment and educational purposes and does not constitute medical advice. You should always consult your doctor before making any changes to your nutrition or physical activity habits or your mental health regimen. Once again, thanks for listening. Don't forget to hydrate and have an extra scoop of protein for me.
Hey, I'm Tammy from Next Level Me, and we are so proud to be sponsoring Fitness for the Rest of Us. Why? Because just like this show, we believe growth should be real, relatable, and for everyone. At Next Level Me, we help you reset your rhythm, reclaim your voice, and realign your life. With courses and content that promote clarity, confidence, and momentum, we enable you to align with what matters most. If you're interested in leveling up in life, not just fitness, come find us at nextlvlme.com.